Perfect. So just to start out, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves and give us a little bit about your background and what brought you to make your film.
I'm Caroline. I made the short film The Test. And basically I was just living and working in Beijing the past 5 years and teaching at a university. And the story kind of fell into my lap because that actually happened to my coworker. And yeah, the character was also based on her, and then some other women I met in China. Also kind of as a statement for, so in China when you're over 27, if you're not married, you're called, there's a phrase, it's a leftover woman. Yeah, so it's kind of a tribute to that as well. Yeah.
My name is Maeve Jackson. I did the short, The Beautiful, the story sheet trial. And it was, I have an artist background. I'm a fine artist that works in photography and video. So just through, like many people do through conversation, I started having with certain friends of mine and women that this idea kind of came through of just what is beauty, and I think, like, you know, that personal experience and personal story that you want to tell, and how could I tell that through just like a one action, one visual of a woman unwrapping her head and revealing this identity that has so much history. And I was really lucky that the conversation I had that developed this project was with a good friend of mine. So she was the woman in the film, and then I shot the film and then ended up coming across and meeting a poet that fit perfectly and really took the piece into her own direction. So, yeah.
I'm Lisanne Sartor. I did Heimlich, and years and years ago when I was in college, I have an identical twin sister who wrote her thesis and did a lot of work with battered women who killed their spouses. And because this was something she was interested in, I did a lot of reading about it, and it always stayed with me. And a couple of years ago, a friend of hers has written this short story, which is what this is based on. And what I found so interesting about it was that the woman in the story wasn't necessarily aware that what she was experiencing was abuse. And it was taking this build, this very slow build, to understand what she was really going through. And that really stayed with me. And I thought, wow, this would make a great short film, and this would really potentially make people look internally to examine what they're really going through and to take a better look at it.
I'm Willow O'Feral, and I'm the filmmaker that did Break the Silence, the long piece at the end. And I live in Brattleboro in southern Vermont, and the project started shortly after the presidential election. I co-founded a group called the Women's Action Team, which is like a reproductive justice and feminist collective in Brattleboro. And the project really came out of those conversations. I'm already a filmmaker, but we were all kind of bringing our different skills to the group. And we were talking about how do we advance reproductive justice goals and protect women and girls. And I feel like storytelling is one of the most powerful tools for changing hearts and minds. And so that's how the project came about. And it's all women from the Brattleboro area. I tried to get a good, like a big diverse group. But yeah, one of the things that really shocked me doing the project was, so we interviewed 17 women, and I think exactly half of them, or a little over half, when I never asked a question about being raped or molested or anything, but when I asked about their first sexual experiences, it turns out that over half of the women, their first sexual experiences was, being raped or molested. So I'd already been doing, my partner Brad and I have been working on a documentary about Native American women survivors of rape who are fighting to increase tribal sovereignty. And so we're already steeped in that, gender violence stuff, but I was really not expecting, most of the women are middle class. I just wasn't expecting this random selection of women from Brattleboro to have that, it's a much higher statistical rate than you would think. So it was very sobering.
So So I want to talk a little bit, and we'll just go down the line again, any challenges shooting or, any anecdotes from shooting, just anything you'd like to share even? Just give you a little bit of free space to tell us some stuff.
Okay, probably the hardest shots were definitely in university, because that's where I worked. I shot like right before summer vacation, so I could still use the space. I was still playing teacher in the fall, and by the end of the day, I was like, I'm definitely fired. After
Yeah, I was going to say, how did they react to you making this film?
I asked for permission before, kind of. I was like, oh, I'm going to shoot a documentary on college life, and I like sitcom and everything. I got the rooms reserved, but then, like I told them I was bringing equipment, but it was proper equipment. I think they thought I was shooting with an iPhone and a tripod and everything. So yeah, basically I filled the hallway, and then the security department came and tried to shut us down. So actually halfway through shooting that scene with the professor and the dean in the hallway, we got in trouble. And I had to go to the office and try to explain, and I just got in my head to pretend that my Chinese was really bad, so then they were super lenient about it and really nice. Yeah, but and also that scene, only the main actress, she's a professional actor, but everyone else was just kind of friends or helping and everything. And also right at that moment, everyone did a great job in the end, but also one of the actresses just completely forgot everything that was going on, so it was just juggling all of this and then trying to deal with also these guys from the security, and then in the end, all these professors got called into this room and we're just pointing fingers at each other, blaming each other, and I was like, this could be a film in and of itself. And yeah, so it's
part 2, right? The aftermath.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, there wasn't really any challenges in the making of it because it was just not as complicated of a production. It was sort of like a one camera and just sort of naturally developed. But I think for me, personally as a filmmaker and an artist, was that now entering into this film festival world, because I'm so used to working with galleries and exhibitions, and there's complications in that whole wave of things as well, because video is a new medium that's actually being exhibited in museums and galleries. New, and I say new, it's not new, but compared to painting and drawings it is. So that there has really been some challenges of understanding how this piece sits with people, or how it's going to, the reactions, because it was meant to be seen on a loop in a gallery, and that was its first home for a while. And then just through my interest in film and being in investigating the film industry, I was lucky to get guided to start submitting it to festivals, and it's had a long life. It's been shown for a year now. So, it's okay, I can do two things. It can be in two worlds. So that challenge of navigating the film festival world and the gallery world has sort of been that challenge, and figuring out how it's going to be, and it's turned into a whole new body of work. There's I have a photographic series and these paintings that are also a part of it as well, because when you take on a gallery and you're showing a video work and you have to fill a whole space, it's a little bit different than being on screen, and just the dynamics of the room are really different. So that's been my challenges.
One of the clear challenges is that I had 2-year-old twins that I worked with, and so I wanted to make sure that, because I had worked with children before, I was an assistant director, which means I was a set manager on features and TV shows before I became a director and a writer. And so I knew that bringing small children onto the set, I knew what that would involve, and I worked very hard to make them comfortable, to make their parents comfortable, so that we could get what we needed from them. But the other big challenge was because of the actual material, I did a lot of rehearsing because I wanted my actors to be comfortable with each other and with the scenes that were there. And when the two things collided, when having sensitive material and having children on the set actually came to pass, and what I think about now, looking back, is that I wish I was so sensitive to the children the day of the shooting, and there was so much other stress going on, because when you shoot, something always goes wrong. I mean, it's just that's the way it goes. And you just kind of roll with it. But I didn't, looking back, I wish that I had been much more sensitive, even though I still was sensitive with my actors the day of. I wish I had checked in with them more during the actual bedroom scenes to make sure that they were okay, and they turned in wonderful performances. They are professional actors and they definitely can take care of themselves, but this was the first time I'd ever shot something like this, and were I to do it again, I would have taken more time during the shoot to be much more introspective with them in that moment. And I still think they did a phenomenal job. I'm so impressed with them and how they worked. But that's something that I take away and I will take into other projects for sure.
So filming Break the Silence was pretty straightforward. I was just working with what I had. And so we had the white seamless backdrop, and there was me running sound and camera. And then there would be the person being interviewed and someone doing the interview. But we would sort of tag team it, usually myself and another person who was often a friend of the person being filmed. And I guess the challenges were, I was doing this in between other stuff, and in my office is like right on the busiest corner in Brattleboro, which actually has a lot of trucks, jake braking and stuff. So you hear all this ambient noise, and we did our best, but sometimes, actually my friend Kira, she's the young black woman who was sort of almost coerced into taking the HIV/AIDS test in the film. She saw it when we first showed it at the Latches, and she came up to me afterwards and was like, "I love all that noise you added, like the weird guitar strumming kind of, and like the truck noises and the sirens." So they're like, yeah, thanks. There's a musician in the studio next to mine, and she was like playing guitar, and I didn't want to interrupt the emotional moment we were filming, so I was just like, let it go, which was a good learning moment. Like, don't let it go. Stop everything, make the person shut up, that's playing guitar in the next room, and then go back. But it was a good learning experience.
Awesome. Well, I want to go ahead and open it up to the audience. Do you guys have some questions? Yeah, right there.
Carolyn, great job. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed also how you were able to make a narrative focused on one person, but sort of through this one person's story, contain all the really complex array of themes. So my question is very specific cultural context in China, and I guess my question is what the reaction has been like to the film in China, and what it's been like abroad, and how they're different, how they're similar.
So I haven't really shown it in China. Just to the crew and everyone who really, they appreciated it. But I'm not sure. I got people telling me be careful showing this there. I haven't really submitted to festivals there. I would like to go back also. I don't want, to have that out at the moment, I guess there. I think, especially about, I don't know if this was picked up on, but kind of tying it all together with the, government, how they're issuing the pollution, the system, and increasingly flexible standards just so disturbance is minimized in society. And that's basically what was happening also at the college, just trying to, push this under, these idioms are escaping me, but brushes under the carpet to just for the sake of appearances, basically. Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting, like, in China, I got a few people saying something to me. They thought the message of the film was that she was basically just punished at the end because she was cheating, or she was having an affair with a married man. She was like, oh, so she's trying to do something, but karma is getting to her, so, and that was not what I think, but okay, like, that you make it, you know, make of it what you will. And little nuances I kind of put in, I don't know if they read the same to certain audiences, like, I mean, something like her smoking, it wasn't simply just wanting her to do an action or showing, you know, she might be stressed in this moment, but also in China, like, it's not very respectable for a woman to smoke. Like an example is like at weddings, gifts for guests would be like cigarettes for the men and candy for women. So it's like really like if you smoke, you're kind of bad, but kind of showing, you know, that that's not the case. I have met, you know, any women who smoke that were not bad. Yeah, so yeah, little knots like that. I don't know if they read, probably here it's just like, oh, she's smoking, what? That's no big deal, but yeah, just throw those things in there.
Yeah, right there.
So for you, on the test, how did you come to end it the way you did, which was really a lovely statement about honesty, you know, and I thought that was the takeaway.
I'm really glad it came across like that because it was kind of an improvised ending. The original ending script was completely different, actually. I had the student even coming back in, but due to technical difficulties that had to be scrapped. But then we kind of changed. It was a bit of a mishmash, even the last scene, some rewriting and dubbing and things. But the ultimate sense I wanted to get across was that no matter what, she couldn't really overcome this machine of society and the institution. And what really helped also was, I mean, the whole crew was fantastic, and also the sound design really helped tie it together in the end. And I wanted this kind of, you know, kind of crushing feeling of her alone in the hallway. And it was also kind of a nod to what happened to my friend and coworker at the university, because she really couldn't tell anyone what happened. She told me, and then she made me promise not to tell anyone. So I was like, I guess I won't tell anyone, and I'll make a movie about it. But yeah, so it was kind of also just like, and for her, that's her life career, basically. She's a professor at that college, and that's what the rest of her life, basically, unless she makes a drastic career change, she's going to be there. And that happened to her in her first year. And what was even more insulting, she said, right before school let out, then when word got out that this had happened amongst her colleagues, colleagues were just joking with her, being like, oh, don't mess up again. So it's still always on her, like she's the teacher who made a mistake, but she didn't actually make a mistake. So yeah, that was kind of how the ending came about.
Yeah, right back.
I just want to say again with the metaphor of the three, the environmental cheating and personal cheating, and I mean, I thought that last part of it just nailed it so beautifully. Just the huge cheating that's happening around the globe is really like,
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily see it as, sure, okay, there are parts of, you know, we can, it's like, oh, cheating is bad, so on and so forth, but I also found it kind of this inevitable part of human nature that I wanted to explore a little in here, so from the personal level to the societal level, and you know, and then I see, I mean, because I was a teacher, like, so many students of mine cheated, but on one hand, I could understand, you know, they wanted to do the best, and the only thing is, oh, that's not, you know, where do you draw the line? That's not fair to students who then honestly do their work. So yeah, very complex issue.
Yeah, right there.
I have a question for Willow. I love what you said about the power of stories to change people and empower folks. I know it's incredibly hard when you're working with survivors to honor privacy and boundaries, and I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about how you manage that, because people really shared so deeply, and it was a gift to all of us who got to see it. What was that like for you to manage it?
Manage people's privacy.
People's
And-
vulnerability and how much they would want to share, how much ended up actually making the cut. Did they pull back sometimes and say, don't, I don't want to share that, or?
Right.
I'm interested in the process and the relationship, I guess.
Yeah, it's a constant conversation. I feel like all these women obviously wanted to participate, so that helped. Some of them took some persistence on my part, like Orally, the last trans woman who talks about her experience at NYU Tisch. She was introduced to me through a mutual friend, and I asked her to participate. I was really wanting to have trans women participate, but it was a hard sell at first, because a lot of trans women get really stupid questions all the time, from ignorant people who are want to know things about them that's not anybody's business. And, I'm doing a project about sexual and reproductive health, so I was going to ask some of those questions, and Orally was she went through some surgery recently and she was just feeling really raw. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then 4 months later it was like, hey, can you participate? And she was like, no. But she was sort of warming up. We were warming up to each other. And then by the third time I asked, she was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then she was like the gatekeeper to this whole queer trans community that was really amazing. Once she sort of vetted me and was like, she's not that bad. She's pretty, and now we're best friends. But yeah, she kind of helped introduce me to other people. And that's sort of how I think that was gaining people's trust is, it's a slow process sometimes. But then once the ball starts rolling, it really picks up speed because people are kind of representing you to their friends and community, which was really great. There's so many stories. I think it was hard finding the balance between the heavier stories and the lighter stories and the humor and the darkness. I left out so many really incredible stories, hundreds of stories. Sheila, the first woman whose story is really happy and fun, about losing her virginity and having a great time. She sobbed through the rest of her, a 2-hour interview, and all the rest of the stories are just ugh. So I had to make some decisions of how am I representing each person. Ultimately, everyone was really happy with how Sharon, she's the one who complains about her husband not getting a vasectomy, and I'm friends with both of them. Her and her husband were in the audience at the first screening in Brattleboro, and he was just going like this. But it started some really amazing conversations in the community. I've been in the food co-op, and men have come up to me and been I'm not going to get a vasectomy. And then, all these people start inching around us. And then I'm well, why? I'm really scared. It's terrifying. What about what women have to go through, And then it just opens up this whole avenue of conversation that I didn't have available to me before. I love those kind of conversations. More interesting than the weather.
That's going right there.
Yeah. So first of all, what a great collection. I kind of felt the whole theme could be breaking the silence for all the films. In a way, it's all about women's voices and how they get trampled upon and how men sometimes control the narrative, and especially with their reproductive rights. But really in all of them, I think it kind of came through that way. So by way of question, I was just going to ask for breaking the silence. So when the women actually watched the movie, when they screened it, was any of that sort of, therapeutic for them? Because it just struck me as how common it was. You read about the Catholic Church and all these abuses. I just feel was anyone not molested or raped when they were a child? It just seems so pervasive now in every realm that I just wonder if there was any kind of redemption for them, or at least that they absolving them of the guilt. Maybe just seeing other people who've gone through the same things. They were just being interviewed by themselves, but then to see all the other narratives.
Yeah, we handed out response cards to the audience. And we've done that at a couple different screenings, and it's been really incredible. We had 3 responses at the first screening, and they were all anonymous. I assume they were women because it was very loopy to stereotype, loopy handwriting. But they were saying that they were so affected by some of the stories that they felt like they were going to go back and confront a rapist from their past. There were 3 women that said that, which I was floored. Oh my God. Wasn't anticipating that, kind of level of response. But just a kind of I feel the overall reaction to the film is one of sort of a joyful sense of catharsis and release, like, ugh, it's good to hear all this stuff that we go through and we don't get to talk about, we don't even get to hear about. And yeah, so that, some of the women in the film have been deeply affected by the film. I think the last woman, Lisa, she has, her life is just, I mean, you could go on and on about her life, but she was raped actually at 8 years old before even this incident that she talks about. By a stranger, she was dragged off a playground along with 2 friends of hers, and she's actually reconnecting with those 2 women that were girls back then with her, and they're getting together, and they might start a process of the rapists went to jail in that case, but they're thinking of confronting them, and I might be a part of that somehow. So it is, the stories are continuing, continuing to unravel and go deeper, and that'll be interesting to see. I think, it's hard breaking the silence. I think there's a lot of pain that comes up. It was painful for me to do it, to hold those stories sometimes, but ultimately a relief afterwards and an ability to grow and evolve, and also I think good for other people to hear the story, people that might not, hear those stories regularly, just for us all to be more educated. I wish we could all just be less weird about sex and reproduction. It's because it's in all of our lives,
Yeah, right there.
Thank you. All those films are, they're all so moving and so well done and really awesome. I kind of stumbled in here late not knowing what I was getting into, and I ran into someone who's like, oh, it's a really great block of feminist films. And so, as a filmmaker and as a woman as well, it's like, oh wow, female sexuality, like just marked by stigma and violence all the time. So thanks for telling these amazing and really powerful and truthful stories. And I'm just wondering, you're holding or you're diving into these worlds. I don't know, not how does it affect you necessarily, or maybe like a better interesting question is like, what are you all doing next? Or has the experience of making this film colored, like, oh, I want to keep investigating like this kind of thing, or I need a break from all the trauma of female sexuality. Where are you guys?
Well, actually, let's take it. I would love for all of you to answer this one. And I thought your first question was also really interesting about, how you, because this is hard, like the stuff that you're dealing with is hard, and how do you take care of yourself, and how do you, so both questions are valid. Yeah, so we'll go down. We can start with you.
I'm doing comedy next. Seriously, I am definitely doing a comedy next. I'm doing a web series, but it's dark and twisted, and it's about sisters. So there's still a definite female component, and it's about how women get pitted against women. But I needed a break. I needed a break from it, and it's funny because when I first started writing, I did much more comedy, and when I started making films, that's not what I did. So it's kind of nice to have that break, because doing this and then editing it, you forget that the editing process, you live with this footage all day long for hours and hours and hours and weeks and weeks and weeks, and if it was a feature, it would have been even more intense. But doing that short also led me to the next feature that I'm writing, not the one that I'm currently financing, that one's a dramedy, but it's about sexual abuse, and it's about child sexual abuse, and I don't know that I would have written that had I not made this short. So it's really interesting to see how each project leads you to something else. And I always have like 3 or 4 things going at once, just so that I don't get blocked. And even the comedy is fed by Heimlich. So.
Trying to think how to answer that question. I think there's a lot of, well, I guess for me, we live this stuff, so actually not talking about it, not dealing with it is more painful. And that would be my response. It's not really a choice.
Well, tell them a little bit more about
So Arming Sisters is a feature-length doc that's in post-production. Brad is standing at the back, and I have been working on it for 4 years, and we just got a Vision Maker Media grant, which is so exciting. We never got a grant before. And so hopefully it'll be on PBS and also doing festivals and stuff in a year. And it's about Native American women, survivors of sexual violence who are the most raped demographic of women by a lot, statistically, in the US. And we heard about this through a young Lakota Indigenous women self-defense instructor, Patty Stonefish, who was she was our portal into this whole project. And I had never heard of this, about how Native women are so preyed upon. And a really remarkable part of that story is that 86% of rapes committed against Native women are perpetrated by non-Native men, according to the US Department of Justice. And that's a really remarkable statistic because all violent crimes are normally within the race. So you're, as a white woman, are more likely to be attacked by a white man. And the only exception to that is Native women, who are raped overwhelmingly by white men. And so Brad and I were like, what the fuck is going on? We have to find out about this. Why isn't this common knowledge? Why isn't everyone talking about this? So we kind of embarked on this journey to find out. And through this met like this web of just unbelievably powerful women who are fighting to increase tribal jurisdiction as a part of fixing this problem, which is slowly over time, the Supreme Court decisions and congressional decisions, tribal sovereignty has been eroded and taken away to the point where if a non-Native person rapes a Native person on tribal land, tribes do not have the jurisdiction to apprehend or prosecute that individual non-Native rapist. And rapists know that. Rapists tend to do it over and over again. They tend to be emboldened in situations where they know they're going to get away with it, and they know that they can basically rape Native women with impunity. And they can, and they do. And so we're hoping that our doc will be an argument for reinstating tribal sovereignty to the tribes. We've been breaking our treaties with them, since we wrote them up. And if that can be reinstated to tribes, they have a fighting chance to protect themselves. I mean, that's only one piece of it. Racism is the bigger umbrella, but and gendered violence. So yeah, that's Arming Sisters.
Yeah, and I've actually seen a preview of this work like a year ago, 2 years ago. It's incredible. Like, you guys should all follow Willow. I don't know, we can go through the line and sort of say where you can follow you guys, but I'm really excited to see it. It's going to be awesome.
So I'm going to answer that second question, or maybe it was the first, of how the project sort of affected me as like a woman and a filmmaker. So I guess, like, for me, I was lucky that I was like very close with the woman that I filmed. But I think for me as her friend, I got to really understand what she was feeling like being an African American woman in today's society. But also, she's over 10 years older than me, so what she experienced at my age, she was able to share with me through many conversations. So in a way, the film kind of became this chance for me not just to be a listener, but to also display her experience, and in maybe a way that was not that's very layered. So I think that as like a person was really, really great. But then also I really believe in like people, like I think about who's telling the story and how is it being told, and so I reflect a lot about me being a white woman sharing a story about an African American female experience, and I contemplate about that a lot, and just kind of how do I navigate, and I navigate that in answering it. And the question has come up many times in festivals or in the art world. And so for me, it's that as a maker that I'm able to, like, prior to the project even having a life, like it just being made, it was just a very genuine gesture of just like having this conversation with a friend, but then letting go of the project and letting that experience be Nadira's and then be Destiny's voice, and kind of as a filmmaker let go of what I initially thought the narrative was going to be, that maybe allowing it to be not my own experience, and let them take the narrative into their own direction, and also realizing that if I was to say like, no, like we should just keep it like not about you personally and your culturally how you experience things, that then myself I was going to be silencing them in a way. So, you know, it is what it is, and they love it and I love it, and it's just been able to open a lot of people's eyes, and not only female, but having like men come up to me no matter what age and kind of have an understanding of what goes on in women's heads when they're thinking about themselves and how they look and how they present themselves and all that pressures of society and all of that. But I also, then to go into your other question, I do have like a heavy hand in doing a lot of artwork about women. So I'm continuing to develop a series of, my next project, art-wise, is a photographic series of women in landscape as they maintain the land, and again following that, like those single actions, whether in this piece like unraveling your hair and feeling your hair and that visceral experience, or raking up like grass after mowing and that experience of being that like caretaker and maintaining the land. And so that's art-wise, and film-wise, starting in the editing process of a documentary that I shot for 5 years. So now I'm able to delve into the footage of that. Yeah.
Well, this helped launch more of an interest definitely for me into film production, because before I'd previously done mainly film theory and screenwriting, and definitely a big learning process and still a lot to learn, and definitely an interest in continuing kind of more stories based on women, specifically in China or Asian American experience, and currently, I guess like current and next project would be something kind of along the veins of breaking the silence. I helped produce a documentary my friend made, where she invited her sexual assaulter back, on camera, because during the whole Me Too movement and everything, he actually got in touch with her to apologize for his actions that happened maybe 10 years ago. So then they met each other for the first time, also in this documentary, to have a conversation also about this gray area of sexual assault. So, yeah.
I'm going to do one more question from the audience if there is one. Yeah, right in the back.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd like to laud you all for your impressive efforts, to pushing the social, the boundaries of those social taboos. And also comment as a member of the male tribe, we don't come out as endearingly or as charmingly as we might be. Is there any project that any of you have in mind actually to impact male behavior as to change outcomes as you have reflected in your movies?
Men need to do the work.
we need help from women.
Y'all been getting a lot of help.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. Y'all are all powerhouses. I'm so excited to see what your next work is going to be. If there's some way to follow you, or like what your website is, if you want to give that out now, but otherwise we'll close this out here.
I just want to say I do appreciate the comment, and I think that I've noticed some men feel really bad after watching Break the Silence, and I'm sure, your film made me terrified. Yeah, And I just want to say that, I mean, there were so many male allies and good men also in Break the Silence, and I don't want that to get lost, you know, like the man who told Marlene, you know, your housemate jumping on top of you while you're unconscious is not okay, and that there are a lot of men doing the work, and I would like more men to get in front of, you know, rape culture and do something. Just don't be paralyzed by the fear that you're going to do it wrong. I mean, I feel this as a white person in the face of racial injustice. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to be an idiot or do the wrong thing, but we just have to get in front of it and do something. Stand up, take action, you know, I don't know. Just do something. Listen to women, listen to what they want. You know, if someone's getting catcalled in the street, go up to the man and say, that's fucked up, don't do that. Like, you know, do something. It's not that hard. And once you start doing even little things, it's like a muscle and you can do more and more. That's what I found with racial justice work is it feels good to do something. It feels bad to be paralyzed. So just take action. That's a more generous response.
And I'm just going to add to that too. I think there's a lot of fear of like you said, of saying something wrong when you're trying to do something right. But I mean, there's always a way to like try and correct yourself. Like even if you're wrong once and you do something wrong once, like I think if you like genuinely feel bad and like you kind of have to like forgive yourself and move on and, you know, do the right thing afterwards. I think so many times people hold themselves back. And I think I have a lot of male friends and that hold themselves back so much because of that fear of doing that one thing wrong. And we all make mistakes, and I think, you know, a lot of women, people who identify as female and women will, you know, like they'll be happy to see that you're correcting yourself because so many times, or correcting others, that step is also really appreciated, I think, as well.
All right, let's give them one more round of